Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special Thursday night mini edition of Talking Away the Taboo. We are going live tonight with our board member, Rachel Tuchman. Rachel is an incredible part of the team behind everything that we do here at I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. And we lean on her for lots of different pieces that we want to be able to bring to you and want to be able to do it in the most sensitive and the most appropriate way possible. Okay, I'm going to bring her on. Here she is. I don't even know what to say. Is it an exciting topic? It's not really an exciting topic, but I think it's a topic that's not talked about very often. Rachel, I'm trying to grab you.
Right.
Oh, you're here. Okay. So we're here to talk about something that's not talked about very often, anger at God, right? And is it okay to be angry at God? And I want to just set the stage for people and say that we've been posting a lot about the emotions that people are having this time of year. And frankly, we do it 365 days of the year. It's not what we're doing right now is not unique. We do this all the time. But we sit and we speak about people's emotions. And one of the ways that we do that is we take words of people in our community, in the I Was Supposed to Have a Baby community, and we use it to talk about the pain that they're feeling, to validate it, to use it as an example of what other people we know that are out there that are not ready to express their pain, that can't access the pain. And we do that specifically to hold space for everyone. And so, Rachel, I want to come to you and say, like, what about this anger at God? Like, what are your thoughts? You are a mental health professional. You sit and hold space for people all of the time. That is your job. What talk to me about the anger, the shame, the guilt about being angry at God. I'm wondering if you're frozen. That's what I'm wondering about. Can you hear me? Wait, she's going to come back. Hold on. Technical difficulties, guys. Technical difficulties. Let's see. So that's what we're doing tonight. And oh, okay, we're back.
Yeah, I
Okay,
got
excellent.
kicked off. I don't know what happened.
Okay, so I want to just open it up and give you the floor, and let's talk about like the discussion, some of the discussion that you and I were having offline earlier today.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Um I think that we're taught early on that there are some like discussions or things that we're not allowed to say as like religious Jews. And I think as we get older, we learn that those things are actually not true. We are allowed to ask certain questions. We are allowed to speak a certain way. We're allowed to have certain feelings. And as we understand like our relationship with God in a more mature way, then we actually understand that we're allowed to have feelings like confusion and anger and resentment and questioning, why did God do such things? Like we realize that we're allowed to have these issues and we're allowed to bring them up and we're even allowed to question figures in Tanakh and we're allowed to be like, why did he do that? Or why did she say that? And the reason we do it is because it helps us to understand that area more, those people more, and even to understand ourselves more, and it enhances the relationship. And I think just like in a relationship with someone a human that we feel close to, we're going to have issues and we're going to come to them and be like, why did you do that? Or why did you say that? Or why did you treat me that way? And we're not doing it to be disgusting to them and and because we hate them and we want nothing to do with them. Usually we're doing that because we want connection and we want to understand, or to actually just let the person know, even if we're not going to understand, we just want to let them know like, hey, this was really painful for me. And the reason we're doing that again is because we want that person to know so that they will either not do it in the future or to give them an opportunity to make it right with us. And I understand that with God, it is different. He's not necessarily going to make it right with us, but we're allowed to, when things go on in our life, we're allowed to be why is this happening? What is going on? And again, we've seen it in Tanakh. Like we've learned about it. Even when we were kids, we learned about like Hannah asking these questions and David HaMelech, Tehillim. There's whole sections of Tehillim where he's like, why did you abandon me? And why do you hate me? And why are you doing this to me? And so we're allowed to ask those questions. I think people get uncomfortable with that because maybe they think that it's wrong or that it's like a lack of faith or it's disrespectful. But again, I think that when you're in a loving relationship, there is that tension of like, sometimes I'm really angry at you, and sometimes I want to say things that maybe I don't necessarily mean, but I need to get it off my chest. And I think the safety of having a loving relationship, let's say with a parent, and that's how we kind of view God as a parent, is that we can speak to our parent in ways that we wouldn't speak to a partner necessarily, and we know that like they'll love us unconditionally, you know. And just like if our kid is screaming at us when they're angry, you're the meanest mom and I hate you and you're the worst dad, that is not the time to turn around to your kid and be like, excuse me, that is not how you speak to me, that is disrespectful. Obviously we don't want our child speaking that way, but if we're really listening, we're saying, my child is having a very hard time. They're very hurt. They're in pain. And so I need to come to them and say, what's wrong? What can I do for you? You're so upset. And we believe that God is even greater than us and a loving father figure, parent figure. Then we should believe that if we express that anger, that there's no like, excuse me, don't speak to me that way. Like it's you're in pain and I understand that. And that maybe you blame me for the pain you're in because you can't understand why you're going through what you're going through. And so I think we just need to normalize all emotions and all feelings and expressions of them and get comfortable with the fact that like we're gonna question why bad things happen and we're going to express anger about them too, and like that's okay, you know?
Yeah, one of the things that I keep coming back to during this whole discussion is the idea that when when people are angry at someone, I was actually just listening to 1840 with David Bashevkin, and his last podcast that dropped was about estranged people, parents who are estranged from from their children who are estranged from their parents, and what is the idea of reconciliation? Like, how do you bring people together? And what I kept going over again and relating this to the fertility world and also my own story was that when people make us so angry and so upset, and the relationship is toxic, that we believe that it's not loving and that it's not anything that could be ever fixed, we just cut people off, we cut people out, and we move away, and we're done, and we're like, I'm done, I'm out of here, goodbye, right? And we know that there are plenty of people who leave the community, who are distanced themselves, who don't do anything anymore in regard to God at all.
Yeah,
I think that the difference here in the expression of the anger and the like, how could you do this to me? And like, this is horrible. And I've done all these things and I've tried, is that you want to become close. You want that relationship. You want, like, you thought that everything was good. Like, you're supposed to take care of me. How come you didn't take care of me? I'm still here. I'm still wanting to be part of the system. I'm still wanting all of this. I don't want to be estranged. I
yeah,
want this. So I need the anger, the pain, the grief is this expression of wanting to be close and like not understanding why that's not happening.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think that we want to be able to encourage like healthy expression of anger. And a healthy expression of anger is, you're hurting me. I don't understand why you're doing this. And I think that sometimes it can come out in a jarring way that maybe someone will speak in a way that you wouldn't necessarily speak. So while you might say, God is hurting me, why is he doing this? Someone else might say, I hate him. And you might be like, oh my God, like don't say that, you know? But again, I don't think that the response or it's our place to be like, but you can't say that about God. You know, I think everyone's relationship with religion and spirituality and God is very personal, and we don't know what's going on up there if you know, like who's allowed to say what. And again, I really do believe that at the end of the day, like if we view it the way that we view how I would see if my child was saying those things and felt so hurt by a decision that I made that they didn't understand, or by something that was happening that they thought was my, you know, my doing, my response would not be, how dare you? I would, of course, feel so sad for them, and I would want them to not be in pain, and it would be painful for me to see them in pain. And I really do believe that God is the same way. And I know from my infertility journey, I felt angry and confused a lot. And I felt double angry because I thought I was a really good mom and I couldn't have more kids, and I was working in jail where there were women who were drug addicts and had kids in the system and were abusive, and some that even murdered their children, and they were coming in pregnant. Like, how is that fair? And so I was really angry at God, and I felt like it was a smack in the face every time a woman would come into the jail and be pregnant again, and I couldn't have a kid. I'm supposed to be okay with that. I was angry.
You're like, I was, so many of you know this also. I was working as a pediatrician in the neonatal intensive care unit, and which was during the time when I had many of my miscarriages, and these teenage prostitutes coming in with their third pregnancy, and these babies being born at 27 weeks, 28 weeks, and me thinking to myself, you're just going to go out and get pregnant again, and the same thing's going to
Yep.
happen. And I'm desperate for a
Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
Desperate. I was so angry, so angry. I had to quit my job, like partially because of the anger, partially because of the grief, partially because it was too painful for me to take care of other people's babies anymore. Like, that's the way the anger for me manifested. It was
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah. That's a big reason why I left. I couldn't see it anymore. I just felt like it's not fair. And again, I allowed myself to have that anger because it made sense to me, and I never felt guilty, like, oh, I'm bad for being angry at God. Like, it was so obvious to me. Of course, I'm going to feel mad. How is this fair? Like, I'm a good mom. I'm a stable house. We're like good parents. We're good Jews. Like, I'm going to raise my kid with good values. Like, and I have to go through hell, what I'm going through, to have another one. Like, these people don't even want kids. I do, you know? So of course I was angry, and of course I was infuriated, and of course I felt the injustice, and it didn't make any sense to me. And again, I think that we have to like normalize that, and we have to allow it. And I was actually reading today just about like anger with God, and I found there was an OU article. I can send it to you after if you want to share it, if you want to read it and then share
Yep.
it. But he was talking about it was just giving all different views about anger, and one of the parts of it was talking about how Rav Moshe Tendler was saying that like an individual, like a person's reaction to pain or anguish, um, we can never look at it and say like, oh, like that's who they are as a person. Like, oh, they're cursing. Oh, they're like a terrible person, right? Because extreme pain, when someone's in tons of pain, they're not able to like access the faculties of their brain that would help them to like make good decisions, speak in a way that they would normally speak. Like, it surpasses that human endurance. They can't do it. And so we don't judge them. And there's a Gemara that even says like that a person is not held responsible when he's in total anguish and pain. Like, he's just not held responsible for what he does. And again, doesn't mean you should be a disgusting human being and treat people badly, but we understand that Hashem, that God, is saying like, I get it, you know? And then he gives like all these examples of different like figures in Tanakh who acted in ways that we might look and be like, how are you speaking like that? Like, you're denying. He gives like an example of like Eov, who was like denying Tchias HaMesim and denying Hashgacha, and he was angry at God and like denying things that are like fundamental to our
Yep.
faith, right?
Yep.
But we see that like he wasn't punished, so we know that people are not held accountable for how they speak when they're upset. And I think for us to see someone expressing their pain in a way that it's kind of like, yes, I felt that way too. Like, I remember feeling that angry, or I remember, having those doubts or having those questions. It's really validating, and it can be very healing for someone to even just to remove the shame that someone feels of like, I feel like I'm a terrible person that I thought that way. But then someone who's literally in the same situation as you says like, hey, I felt that way too. Again, it doesn't mean that it's like acceptable or good, but it means this is a normal reaction to something this terrible or horrible or whatever it is. And so don't beat yourself up about it. Just say this is a response to pain. And it's not glamorous, and it's not beautiful, and it's not even something we're so proud of, but it's normal, and it's common. And I think that alone can be like very healing and comforting, and sometimes that helps people to move through the anger. Oh, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one
Right.
that feels this like bubbling rage inside of me. Someone else does. And even that sometimes can help temper some of the rage.
Absolutely. And one other point that I really wanted to mention is this idea that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like it doesn't have to be this like, I'm so angry at God that I can't keep kosher and I can't keep Shabbos and I can't go to shul and I can't do this and I can't do that. Like you can hold those feelings of being angry and still connect in the way that you want to connect, still do the things that are meaningful for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away anything to be angry. It's part of a relationship. Like there's a woman, I think it's a woman, I may not be a woman. There's a person who wrote on here. She said, I always love the saying that it's better to show our frustration toward God when we're in pain, because that in and of itself is the relationship. And that's exactly what we've been saying all along here. When you're in a relationship, like if you're married, right? You can be angry with that person, but if they need their clothes from the dry cleaner or like they have dirty laundry, you're still doing their laundry. Like you're still feeding them dinner. You're not just totally devoid and disconnecting and you're like moving out and that's it. I mean, at some point, like God forbid, and people are divorced, fine. But part of being in a relationship is that you can be angry and yet still feel connected. It's part of the connection of like we only get angry at people, the people and the idea of Hashem because it matters, because we care. And so I want to just give that other piece here, to not have this all or nothing attitude, to not feel like you have to like throw out everything just because you feel this anger. Like, and I mentioned this story before when I had like I had two miscarriages one year, and one of them was right before Rosh Hashanah. I was so angry with God, so angry. I couldn't go to shul. I wasn't showing up at any of the meals that were, I like so angry. I was burning, but I wanted to hear shofar. And so I had somebody blow shofar for me. Like I cracked open my machzor during Yom Kippur. I think I read Unasana Tokef and like was hysterical and closed it. And like, that was it. But I opened it, right? Like I did the thing that I could do to say, like, I'm still here. Like, you still matter. I'm burning with anger, but it still matters. You still matter.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think that like getting into the gray, like realizing it's not black or white. It's not like I'm angry at you and I hate you and I have nothing to do with you, or like I love you all the time and everything's perfect. Like that is a loving relationship. That is what relationships are. There are times where I'm angry and I don't want to talk to you and I begrudgingly pick up the dry cleaning and like I'm maybe giving one word answers because I need my space and I'm mad. And then times where we're feeling very close and connected, and then maybe even times where we're feeling distant. Maybe things aren't bad, but we're just feeling distant. And I think like understanding that, yes, we only have emotional reactions to the things that we care about. If I'm not reacting at all, like if I'm walking on the street and someone's like, "Hey, dummy," I'm probably not going to react because I'm going to be like that was weird. It's a stranger or it's some crazy person, or I'm not going to react. But if someone close to me is like, that article you wrote last week, it was like really bad. Like, I don't know, you were rambling, it didn't make any, I'm going to take it more personally. Oh, like, wait, what didn't you like about it? And then I'll feel self-conscious because that opinion matters to me. I'm going to have a more of an emotional response to someone that I care about because their opinion matters and their input matters. And, and maybe I want to impress this person. So I care about what they think about what I write. So when we're having emotional reactions to experiences that we're having in a relationship, it's because we care, because we feel pain only when there's like an emotional attachment there. So even then, yes, being angry at God is a sign that there is a relationship with him. And again, like we see that all through Tanakh. We see that like there were so many times that these great figures that we talk about that had this like unshakable faith had moments where their faith was very precarious and it was not so unshakable, that they were like, God, where are you? Why are you doing this to me? This doesn't make any sense. And again, I think that question is so holy, to say like, why are you doing this to me? First of all, it's an acknowledgement that like, yes, I understand there's something divine above me that is controlling this world, but then also to turn to him, or to turn to that presence in that moment and say like, hello, like, did you forget me? Like, why am I suffering, right? We read about it, on Rosh Hashanah, on about Hannah, and she was like, hi, like, I'm literally built to have children. Like, what are you doing? You see that I'm begging you. Why are you not? These were the words she used, right? She had real like chutzpah.
Right.
We're allowed to do that. And so I think that's like important for us to remember. Like, when we're talking out of anger, or where we're talking out of emotion, or again, maybe we're not at our finest, the people who really, really love us, and all the more so God, who's not a human, so does not take these things personally, will turn and say like, I'm here and I understand and I see your pain, and it makes sense and it's valid. And and again, I think when for me, someone who's gone through infertility, when I read words that express anger towards God, I really I'm never offended. I'm never like, oh, what a terrible Jew. It's like, this totally makes sense. And I've spoken to rabbis about it. I've showed them essays from people. I've read words like that to them. I've expressed those things. And there was never a time that a rabbi said to me, you really shouldn't speak that way, Rachel. It's really not nice. Like what kind of Jew are you? It was like, yeah, this anger that you feel is valid. And like, I'm asking the same question, like, why is this happening? And it's not fair. And so again, I think we need to just remember that, like, if we, again, believe that our relationship with God is this like loving, perfect parent, not the parents that we are. Sometimes we lose it. We're not perfect. We're not great, but this loving, perfect parent, then we're allowed to ask those questions. We're allowed to express anger. We're allowed to even feel distant and say like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't feel like praying. I don't feel like, I just like, I'll go through the motions, but nothing's there. Like, I'll stand here in shul, but we're not on speaking terms. You're allowed. And I think even that permission to feel that, I think, is what helps you move through and eventually get to the other side, you know?
Rachel, thank you. I I am so grateful for your words of wisdom here, for giving us the broader perspective, the Torah perspective, the mental health perspective. We all need it, because these are difficult times, even for those of us who are, you and I are not in our fertility years anymore. We're not at that place. But these are still things that we think about and we talk about, and they were very real for us in the moments that we were there.
Yeah.
And we are here for all of you. We are here for all of you in whatever you are holding, in whatever you are saying, and whatever your emotions are. They are valid. They are important. They are demonstrative of a relationship. And we are here to tell you that it's okay, and that he loves you, and that we love you, and that we are here as a community to hold you and to support you. If any of you want to reach out to any one of us, we're happy to talk to you and talk about any of this further. But we wanted to give you a little bit of a snippet tonight to give you some strength, to give you some chizuk in these moments that people are grappling with, and knowing that Yom Kippur is coming. Rachel, any final words?
Just to, like, a reminder that, I think that infertility, like, and I think you wrote it in the caption of one of the posts that you just did, like, it's just a really ugly, horrible time. Like, there's nothing nice about it. Like, sometimes, we can find like a silver lining in some of the struggles that we go through when we're in them. And at least for me, I never found, like, there was never a silver lining while I was in it. In retrospect, I could look back now and say there's lots of things that I learned and that I grew. In that moment, there was nothing beautiful about it, and I wasn't grateful, and I didn't feel like, oh, but I'm so lucky to have like this support group around me, and I didn't want anything to do with it. I don't want to be in this club. It's expensive, it's sad, it's terrible. Like, I didn't ask to be in it. And so I think just remembering like that you're gonna have all kinds of feelings that maybe are even out of character for you, thoughts and feelings, and say things and do things. And just remembering, also saying before, like Rabbi Tendler was saying, like, it's the pain, and pain can bring out like a lot of like yucky things, and it's not who we are, it's what's going on inside of us. And I think that's important too, just to like give yourself grace and compassion and not be like, oh, but I was such a bad person then, and I was yelling and I was this and I was that. Again, that's not, I don't want to be that way and I'm not justifying it, but I really just have to give myself the compassion and empathy and just say like, I'm not proud of those days and they were terrible, but I understand that I was struggling and suffering and it was hard for me. And if you have loss thrown in between the infertility, like, you know, that you're doing cycles and getting pregnant and losing the pregnancy or whatever it is, or all kinds of other trauma, like you can't expect of yourself to be handling this time with grace and, you know, being the perfect whatever it is. Like, so really just being gentle with yourself and saying that any feelings that you have, they're okay to be there. And I think the healthiest expression is kind of even in that post where it's like maybe I'm not taking it out on other people, but I'm expressing it in writing how my relationship with God is being affected. I think that's actually the greatest thing to do because God can handle it. You know, like I don't want to be telling other people, I don't want to speak to other people that way, but I can speak to the being, the presence that can handle it. I can say, hey, like you're really messing me up here, like you're screwing with my life and I don't like it. And God can handle it, you know? So just being gentle with yourself and not judging and hoping that, you know, one day when you're on the other side, maybe you'll see the silver lining, maybe you won't. But just until that time, no judgment. It doesn't help.
Nothing, no judgment.
Yeah.
And we are here for you. We are wishing all of you that you don't feel any of this anger, that you, all of you, each of you, hold a healthy baby in your arms very, very soon. But for whatever length of time, if that doesn't happen, we are here to hold you in your pain and in the grief and in the sadness and in the anger. Have a good night, everybody. Gomar Chasima Tova. We are here. Reach out if you need us. Gomar Chasima Tova.
Good night.